Okay, so in this first lesson, I want you to become familiar with the user interface. So what we'll be doing is going through a quick overview of all the elements that makes up the UI. So let's start. The first thing you should know is that the Inkscape UI is made out of 8 different elements. And let me tell you right away, if you go to the top menu and go to View, and then Show Hide, you'll see a list of all these elements that you can turn off. You can even see this check mark right next to the name that tells you that it's enabled. And you can turn off all of them, and then the only thing you'll see is the top menu and the canvas. The canvas is the only element that you cannot turn off. Another type of elements that you're going to have to be familiar with are the dockable dialogues. The dockable dialogues are basically small windows that have options to different areas of the program. You can open a lot of them and keep them floating or dock them to the right side. And if you pay attention right below the menu to hide the elements, there is this option to hide dialogues. And what this does is to hide all open dialogues at once. So with these two menus, you have a lot of control over what is displayed on the program. Okay, so now let's take a quick look at each of these elements. I want that by the end of this lesson, at least you have some knowledge of what each of these elements do. First is the commands bar, and this bar simply has shortcuts to basic actions like open file, copy paste, zoom in or out, that kind of stuff. This is a good candidate to remove if you're going for a more minimalistic UI, because it really doesn't do anything important. The snap bar has all the snapping options. Later on we'll be taking a deep look at this bar and everything related to snapping. But for now, an important thing you should know is that you can enable and disable all snapping by toggling the first button. I'm telling you because by default the snapping is on, and it may start bothering you when you first start playing with objects and the objects start moving around and snapping to everything. The palette shows multiple palettes of all types, and by clicking in these small squares you can pick colors really quickly. The rulers and scroll bars are two elements that I placed together because I believe that they are more or less useless for illustration. The ruler shows the coordinates of the windows, and the scroll bars let you pan the view. Now, I'm sure that the rulers may come in handy when you're creating something in the graphic design area, but for the most part you don't need them for anything when you're drawing. As far as the scroll bars, you should be using the shortcuts to navigate. Shortcuts are far more effective and easy to use. Both the ruler and the scroll bars are two elements that I turn off when I work in personal projects. The status bar shows information about the document, like selected colors, current layer, mouse coordinates, and zoom. It also shows you shortcuts and tips when you are using tools, so it's always a good idea to keep an eye in there when you are working. The next two elements are extremely important, and we will see them all throughout this course. The toolbox has all the tools you'll be using to do anything, and the tool control bar has the options of the selected tool. So they kind of work together, and you should probably keep them both enabled at all times. Sadly, Inkscape doesn't really offer much as far as UI customization goes. All the elements are basically stuck where they are, but you can switch the position of a couple of bars. If you go to the View menu, you'll see these three options. default, custom, and wide. They change the placement of the commands and the snap bar. The default option keeps the commands bar on top and the snap bar on the right vertically. The custom keeps them both on top and the wide both on the right. I know it's not much, but it can help you fit better some of the UI, especially if you're working on a low resolution screen. The rest of the options of the program are included in the dockable dialogues. As I said before, there are a lot of them, each with its own set of options. Later on we'll go in depth into the most important ones, but for now I want to show you the basics of how they work. So I'm going to open a random one. By default, the first time you open a dialog, it'll be docked to the right of the main windows. If you click in the dialog title, you can drag it off. You can leave it floating there. Then if you want, you can dock it right back. Keep in mind that you can only dock dialogues to the right side. You cannot dock them anywhere else. You can stack them into columns vertically. Or into 2 or more rows, but only to the right side. If you don't need a dialog anymore, you can close it with the X in the title, or you can click in the arrow button and iconify the dock. Now if you want to show it again, just click on the icon. Also, if there's no more vertical space when you stack multiple dialogues, they'll be automatically tabbed. So if you think a dialog has disappeared, make sure it's not tabbed. Finally is the canvas. The canvas is the big white area where you draw everything. I'm sure you noticed this black rectangle in the middle. This is the page border. Now you don't need to draw inside, you can draw anywhere in the white area. The page border is there as a guide in case you want to create PDFs or cards or any document that requires a clearly defined border. You can use the scroll bar to scroll the document and the zoom tool to zoom in and out. However, the best way to move around in the document is to use the shortcuts. To pan the view, hold the middle mouse button or hold spacebar. To zoom, hold Ctrl and use the mouse wheel. A nice little feature is that you zoom to the position of the pointer. You can also use the plus and minus keys to zoom, but only to the center, not to the position of the pointer. Other useful shortcuts are the 1 key to zoom to the 100% and the 2 key to zoom to the 200%. And that's about it for user interface. See you next lesson.